house of Jacob, let us walk in the light. Walk in the light. Walk in the light. Come, house of Jacob, let us walk in the light. Walk in the light of the Lord. Come, house of Jacob, let us walk in the light. Walk in the light.
You're listening to Walk in the Light by Ted Pierce from the Hallelujah Adonai CD. You can find out more at www.tedpierce.com. I recall when my family first started visiting Messianic congregations and using their liturgical sidurs. This is Mark David with Messianic Lifestyles. I even remember wondering if someone would ever put together a Messianic one. Then about 10 years ago, a brother showed me a Messianic siddur that quite honestly amazed me. It was very well written and bound, instead of typed out on a paper and stapled into a booklet like so many of the other ones that I had seen. He told me it was done by a man named Jeremiah Greenberg. Since then, I have been in a couple of other congregations that also used this man's siddurs. His website was also one of the first listed in the directory when we started years ago. Over the years, his website, messianicliturgy.com, and his siddurs have grown. I am proud to have finally met this man, and I want to share him with you. Jeremiah Greenberg, welcome to Lifestyles, my friend.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you for being with us. Before we get started learning the history of your siddurs, I would like to get to know the man behind them. Son of a traditional rabbi, and then in your biography you mentioned living pioneer style in a log cabin. How interesting. Give us some background going into your commitment to the Messianic lifestyle, brother.
Well, I have to give you sort of the short version, really. But in my early 20s, I became a spiritual seeker. I had sort of left Judaism behind because of inconsistencies that I felt, and I just went the way of the world for a while. And then I became aware that there was a spiritual side of life, and became what I called a spiritual seeker at that time. And in my spiritual seeking, I changed my lifestyle. I wound up in West Virginia, where I purchased a 62 acres, and I built a log cabin, and I called my home a spiritual community. And in that whole time, I was seeking spiritually. And eventually, after a 2-year search, which is a very interesting thing, how I progressed from being anti-Jesus because of my upbringing to where I could accept Jesus intellectually. I eventually was born again very supernaturally in a split moment. God just did the final step in an instantaneous conversion, I would have to call it, where I became a believer in a split second. And I just knew that Jesus really was the Son of God, and the Bible is really true. I'm using Jesus because that's who it was at that time. You know, it wasn't Yeshua.
Sure.
And for the next 10 years, I really just considered myself a Christian. I wasn't practicing anything Jewish. People used to slap me on the back and say, "Hey, brother, how does it feel to be a completed Jew?" I would say, "Well, to tell you the truth, I just consider myself a Christian." And they sort of scratched their heads, and they didn't know what to make of that. Mm-hmm. And eventually, after a 10-year period, where about the only thing I did that was traditionally Jewish was when my 2 sons were born, I had them circumcised. It was just something I just didn't feel comfortable not doing. And eventually, a friend of mine invited me to go to a Messianic conference in Pennsylvania that takes place every summer. And I went to that conference, and I argued with people for a week. And after a week, I had what I have to call a subsequent work of grace. Not like salvation, but still, it was a very powerful experience where I realized, where I have to say that God gave me the Messianic vision, which to me was something that was twofold. And the way I would speak of it is that one, it makes sense that in the end times, Jewish people, at least some of them, when they become believers, will remain visibly, identifiably Jewish in some way. That they wouldn't become Baptists or Methodists necessarily, but since they're Jewish, they be Jewish believers. The other thing was that I became interested in Jewish and Messianic symbolism, and I wanted to be identifiably Jewish as a witness to my family and friends, in that just because I had become a believer now in the Jewish Messiah didn't mean that I'd given up Judaism in the sense that, or I should say, my Jewish identity. But so,
Sure.
there were certain practices that usually when you first start out, you get a necklace with a Star of David or something. These may be little,
sure,
but it made sense to me, and that that part of the Messianic calling is that you're more visibly, identifiably Jewish in your witness.
right.
As far as my commitment to Messianic Judaism, it's funny that you said that, because I came out of an Orthodox tradition. In high school, I went to an Orthodox yeshiva, and I just had a lot of problems with it. There were certain things that I just felt the legalism was overbearing. So for a long time, actually, the first Messianic congregation I attended for a long period of time was in Rochester, New York. They had services on Friday night, and I worked for a construction company that had little overtime gravy work on Saturday morning. So I used to work on Shabbat, and I still ate ham sandwiches for a long time either. So for me, when you ask about my commitment to a Messianic lifestyle, I have to say it took a period of years where I had to feel that God was calling me to observe Shabbat a certain way, to give up, or I should say, more positively, to become biblically kosher and related things. So for me, it was something where I had to feel that I wasn't doing it because somebody says you should be doing this, or you have to be doing this. But God eventually brought me around to a place where I love Shabbat, and I really like to stay in services, or I should say at the congregation for a good part of the day on Shabbat, because it keeps me in Shabbat activities, and I have a Messianic lifestyle, and I'm happy with it because it's who I am.
Sure. Actually, all our stories are so individual, but we're also very much the same. I remember after I had gotten back from Israel and actually went over on a walk where Jesus walked tour type thing, and I had met some Messianic believers from Texas that were on the same tour bus that I was on, and of course, long story short, they had told me about the Messianic lifestyle, and so when I got back to the States, I delved right into it. I dive deep into it and to check it out because I want to know the truth in the same way with what you were doing and looking into it. And I'll never forget the first time I went to church service, which my wife and I were on the leadership committee and all, and I wore my kippah and my tzitzit, my talit, everything there. And of course, after the service, the pastor came out and said, Mark, are you sure you want to do this? And I looked her straight in the eye and I said, I don't do anything without searching it out and being 100% convinced this is what I know I need to do. And that was it. That's all it took. And for the rest of the time we went to church there, I wore my Messianic Jewish garb or whatever. So I'm with you, brother. I'm right there. We have to do what we know is right before we do it. If you don't mind me asking, what about your father and family? Where are they with the Lord today?
Well, both of my parents have passed away,
Okay.
and they never really accepted my be becoming a believer. Even though my parents were American-born and they were somewhat modern, they, in their thinking, they gave us kids the best Jewish education money could buy, primarily, or I should say in part, so that we would remain good Jewish kids,
Sure.
and remain true to Judaism. So for them, they took my spiritual seeking and other things that happened in my life as rebellion against them, and they really cut me off, really. And sometimes I used to joke in life that I was more of an ancestor rather than a descendant.
Yeah, we get it from all sides, brother. All sides. So how did the development of the Sidduras come in place?
Well, after I became a believer, excuse me, after I became Messianic,
Okay.
I moved to Rochester, New York. And there I was part of Jonathan Burness's congregation before he went to Europe and eventually wound up out west in Arizona. But he was his first Messianic job was the rabbi of Congregation Shema Yisrael in Rochester. And I used to help with the liturgy there. And in I was trying to figure out if it was 1991 or 1992 in the spring, almost 20 years, 19 or 20 years ago, I led a tour to Israel, a Messianic tour, where we didn't travel on Shabbat and we visited Messianic communities. One of the earliest people that I know of who did that. And when I came back, I remember the first week I was back, I was searching for new direction. And God sort of gave me vision for beginning this ministry. And it was early June, and there was a Messianic conference coming up like 5 weeks later. So I really went to work and developed the first 4 or 5 items of liturgical resources. In those 4 or 5 weeks, it was really a very big project. And my first Siddur was it was a soft bound. I don't remember if it was spiral bound or stapled, but it was not a hardcover Siddur like it eventually developed into.
Uh-huh.
And I developed some other materials also, the Hebrew chants of the wedding service, things you might want to use in a Messianic wedding, and some other materials also. And I went to my first Messianic conference with a new ministry called Messianic Liturgical Resources.
Oh, okay.
The Messianic Liturgical Resources really describes exactly what it is. And I guess in search engines I come up pretty good because it's Messianic, it's liturgical, and it's resources. So,
Right.
and eventually it grew over the years. And in the mid '90s, I worked on the hardbound Siddur, and it was finished around I believe around 1995.
Okay.
It's
Interesting.
been around 15 years or more.
Wow, very good. Very good, very good. Well, when we talked before, you had just overly emphasized to me, and I so agree with you about liturgy and worship. And I want you to share with our listeners what it is that you're so passionate about there, brother.
Well, there are two things that I really feel strongly about in my ministry. And one of them is that Yeshua has to be at the center of everything. I don't believe in anything connected with what I do that doesn't have Yeshua front and center. I'm not interested in being Jewish. I'm interested in being Messianic and being a follower of Messiah.
Amen.
So in all the materials I prepare, I really want to keep and emphasize Yeshua at the heart of it. The other thing that I feel really strongly about is that God has given me a goal to share with people ways to make liturgy worshipful. Now, I say that because liturgy is, to a lot of people, it's neutral, or even when you mention liturgy, they have a negative view of liturgy, either because from a church background they think of liturgical services as just a bunch of rote prayers in some guide that you follow every week, and you just, say the same things over and over again in some way. Or they just see the way liturgy has been used in a lot of Messianic congregations. Now, I myself have gone to a lot of places, even places where they use my materials, where I really don't like it, actually, because they might just say, let's turn to page 35 and sing Mi Chamocha. So they don't... I like to always, first of all, always give the Hebrew and, the English for the prayers before when we may sing them in Hebrew. But I also like to exhort and encourage and introduce items. Now, in the congregation I attend now, where I and others share in the liturgy portion of the service, we have short introductions to all the prayers. And I think this really helps. Instead of saying, and let's just turn to page 35, sure. I for instance, for Mi Chamocha, I would say, we have a 3,500-year-old hymn of praise that Moses and the children of Israel sang when God delivered them at the Red Sea. They sang, Mi Chamocha Beli Maranai, who is like thee, O Lord, among the gods. We're going to sing the same thing that Moses and the children of Israel sang 3,500 years ago.
I see.
Or one other example, if I can share it with you.
Sure.
In the Amidah, the standing prayer, in the first paragraph, the Avot portion, it talks, the Father's portion, it talks about how God promises to bring a Redeemer to the children's children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob because of their faithfulness. And I like to say, and hallelujah, we know who that Redeemer is. He's Yeshua, our Messiah. And in this prayer, and this is a prayer that Jewish people traditionally chant 3 times a day, 7 days a week. And this is a prayer that is actually promising that God will bring a Messiah because of the faithfulness of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then when we sing Baruch Atah Adonai, we go into it, and we do it, and a lot of times we'll do the English first. I like to do English before we do the Hebrew so people can really sing it with their understanding. So some people like to do the English afterwards. It's just my personal preference to do it first.
I love
so
it.
People understand what they're going to be singing, and then if people have been exhorted and encouraged first in the introduction, then they can really do the liturgy in a way that has meaning rather than just, we're doing something Jewish. Because you can't actually, some of it is biblical, but not all of it is, but all of it should be worshipful. And I like to think that liturgy worship should be just as worshipful as worship. And on my website, I have a page of other ways that we can make liturgy worshipful. I have a vision statement for making liturgy worshipful.
I love it. That brings us right into the next thing here is your website address is messianicliturgy.com. Tell us more about what we can find there, brother, right there.
Well, the website has a catalog of all the materials that I have, and it describes them reasonably well. And it has that vision statement that I mentioned. I don't have a lot of articles. I don't post, partly because I'm not a webmaster. And at the moment, I need a new website. I really need to revamp. The website has some problems, but it does basically work. And I encourage people, if they have any questions or they can't find something, to give me a call. And
Sure.
I can always discuss things with people on the phone, and if they want to order over the phone, they can also do that also without having to finish up entirely on the website. I also enjoy talking with people if they call me, and perhaps being able to help them in other ways too.
Well, I get your emails from time to time. As a matter of fact, this always helps to remind me. And you had just sent one out not too long ago where you run specials from time to time, for instance, right now, and that type of thing. So, is there a place on there where they could get on your email list, for instance?
Well, to get on my email list, you would just send me an email at jzgreenberg, and that's green and then B-E-R-G, not U-R-G, but E-R-G, at yahoo.com. And I'd be happy to add somebody to the emails. Now, I try not to send out too many a year. When I have new items in particular, I tend to send out an email, because it usually takes me a while to get it up on the website properly. So I have new items, and then occasionally, for various reasons, I will have specials on quantities of sidurs right now. I have a special on them. So, but again, if somebody wants to, I always enjoy talking to people on the phone, and they can always call me. The numbers are on the website, and if somebody forgets the name of the website, if you just Google Jeremiah Greenberg, you'll usually find a link to me.
Very true.
I'm pretty easy to find on the web. Or if you put in anything connected with Messianic liturgy, I should pop up, because, as I mentioned earlier, the name MessianicLiturgy.com helps a little bit too.
Sure, I agree.
And Messianic resources, yes, that helps, yes.
In listening to you, we think of liturgy literally being for congregations and groups of people, but quite honestly, it doesn't there's no problem with an individual person buying one of your books and using it home in their prayers, right?
Well, people do that all the time. I mean,
sure.
It's like liturgy contains prayers and worship, you certainly don't have to be in a communal environment to want to worship. And a lot of people may be somewhat isolated. Not everyone is blessed to be near a Messianic congregation.
Right.
So there are people that celebrate Shabbat in the home. I do have a section in the Siddur for celebrating Shabbat in the home.
Wonderful.
And, people can really use the Siddur in to learn the prayers. Mm-hmm. So some people just enjoy chanting the prayers.
Sure.
The fact that I not only have the Siddur books, which have everything in Hebrew, English, and transliteration on facing pages, but I also have CDs available for just about everything that I have, which have all the Hebrew portions chanted. Wow. There's pretty much everything that I have developed. I not only have the Siddur for Shabbat, but I also have a High Holiday prayer book and items for Passover and other things. That pretty much everything has its own available CDs, which have the entire Hebrew portions chanted in sequence, by page number, by track. So people can learn, for instance, in the Siddur, they can learn how to chant and sing everything that's in the Siddur in easy-to-follow traditional tunes.
You have been a busy man, my friend.
Well, over the years, I've had
sure.
some time.
Sure. Well, that's great. This is a great service, an absolute great service. I do appreciate you so much. Well, the website also says, I love it at the very beginning. It says that it's your goal to provide the Messianic congregational community and interested church folks with quality liturgical resources for use and enjoyment in the home and at service. Church folks, brother, do you get church folks that buy your sidurs?
Well, actually, not so much in the last year or two, but
Hmm.
which was about 5 or 10 years ago, between 5 and 10 years ago, I used to get a lot of people that they were making sort of a transition with my help. Now it seems like many people from churches are developing their Jewish roots
Right.
um, through the myriad of teachers out there now. There are
Hmm.
quite a few. So I don't get people as often in the transition stage. But there was a time when people in a church service, from churches would call me up, a pastor or a leader would say, we just feel like God is calling us to include some Hebrew liturgy in our services and maybe have a Friday night service on Shabbat. Can you help us? Now, I believe that my materials are very helpful for just that because they don't have to reinvent the wheel. The prayers are there.
Sure.
There's explanations of them in the Siddur, and you have the CDs, which make it easy to learn how to sing things. So I used to get a fair number of calls. As I said, now I don't get too many calls that way because there are so many teachers out there that are reaching out directly
Right. Right.
to folks in who are coming to that realization that there may be something that they want to add to their experience as believers, have a more biblical expression as believers, and there are, as I said, many people who are helping them and teaching them, and so I don't get too many calls like that anymore.
Well,
I mean,
that's really good. You just spoke right into my next question, which was I am constantly getting new submissions to be listed on our website. As a matter of fact, this morning I had gotten one and was emailing back a kind of an alliance of home congregations that had submitted an overall website where you could get a hold of them and find a bunch of different home services, home fellowship type things. And on Messianic Directory, of course, that affords me to the ability to see that there are a lot of Messianic congregations popping up almost every single day. This must be good news for you, right?
well, when you say good news for me, I'm happy to see that people that are well, I believe that God has an end time calling
Right.
where many people in the end times are being called to worship in a Hebraic biblical liturgical style. Now, some people, of course, see this as part of having a Jewish heritage somewhere, but I don't see it that way. I see it more in terms of it's a calling
Hmm.
that many people are feeling called to, and they want to worship this way. And I don't see it as, oh, I'm going to sell more books this way. Frankly, what I do because I believe that God wants me to be doing it, and He's the one who told me to do it in the first place. And actually, most people that I meet, it takes them a long time before they really appreciate liturgy.
Hmm.
Most people that I found, especially when they're starting out, they think they can't do it. They think, oh, it's Hebrew, I can't do it. And of course, many worship songs that are in Hebrew are actually liturgy.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
still, there is a lot of hesitancy, and a lot of times, a lot of people don't have a vision for using liturgy. And as I mentioned earlier, it could be because of a certain kind of church background where they thought of liturgy as being a bunch of prayers that you just say rote automatically, and a lot of Messianic congregations really, I think, butcher liturgy. They use it in a way just it turns me off, frankly. As I really think of liturgy as being neutral. If it's done well, then it can really add to the services, enhance, and make people feel encouraged and really that they can enjoy it. But if it's done poorly, then it just turns people off, and they say, "Boy, this liturgy, I don't want to do it." So it's been an uphill battle, and frankly, it still has a long way to go. As long as I've been in it, almost 20 years now, I'm sorry to say that it is still pretty much an uphill battle. A lot of people just don't have a vision for making liturgy worshipful.
Sure. It's a heart matter, brother. I'm with you. It really is a heart matter. I'm a worship leader from way back, and my gosh, just singing the same songs week after week or every other week is liturgy within themselves, lifting up the Lord. And I loved it when you first started talking to me about liturgy and worship, because that just hit so at home with me. Anything that has to do with worship is wonderful, and that's exactly what it is. In repetition, I mean, even with the scriptures, repetition and that type of thing is where our heart is. I have written 12 books on prayer, and what I did was I took the Psalms and turned them into prayer. And I have 12 individual books divided up into categories, and it in itself is somewhat of liturgy. I mean, it's more like you in your closet, your prayer closet type liturgy. But believe me, brother, I have the same heart that you have for that type of thing. I believe it's the same thing.
I see. Well, that's good.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm in total agreement with you. Surely you must get emails from time to time telling you how much they like your seders, or they're using your seders in congregations. Is there anything special that stands out to you from over the years?
Well, not any particular one thing that anyone said, but the fact that I have from time to time gotten encouragement from people telling me that they appreciate the materials because they don't have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, with the CDs and the English and the transliteration. That's been an encouragement to me because, there are times in life, not so much now, but earlier in life where you wonder, am I living up to my calling? Am I doing what God has wanted me to do? Now, I don't believe we ever completely live out our calling until we pass away. But still, for me, it's been an encouragement when people have said something to me, along the lines of appreciating the things that I've done, because it makes me feel that I've done something useful. Now, there was a time earlier when I used to think, oh, I wish I had some other ministry, like if I was a big evangelist or something, or a congregational leader, because it just seems like, well, developing liturgical materials, what's so great about that? But I do believe that it really is something that God wanted me to do, and He prepared me for, and that it's what I'm supposed to be doing. And especially now in the times we're in, where a lot of other doors sort of closed to me in the last couple of years because of the economy, things that I did previously, I really have felt that God wants me to concentrate in this area where I have certain talent, or not so much talents as much as abilities, because of my background in my youth, as far as training in Hebrew and in the liturgy, that I can develop liturgical resources, and it's my goal at this point to try to develop more materials for the major feasts where we don't really have a lot of messianic materials for celebrating the whole week of Passover, for instance, or the whole week of Sukkot. So one of the things that I feel called to do, Lord willing, if I can in the next year or two, is to try to work on more materials for celebrating the different festivals and feasts. And along those lines, one of the things that we did come out with a year and a half ago was the book for celebrating Rosh Chodesh, the new moon.
Right. Okay.
Which is an area where there was nothing on it. So the fact that now there is something to help people celebrate the new moon, I think that's a help, and hopefully we can do more for celebrating Sukkot and also Passover and Shavuot also, and maybe a few other occasions too.
I love it. You have a great calling, brother, and it is definitely a wonderful service to the entire community. So, are you training anyone to handle more of your business, or you said that this is an ongoing upwards, almost a battle here? Maybe someone to take it over someday.
Well, I think about that, especially as I get older, which I have been. I haven't figured out a way of slowing down that process. Right. But I have a son who's mentioned that he's interested, although he's a busy guy. He actually works as an accountant, and he's got 3 boys under the age of 5. And I'm not sure he has the time to back it up. So actually, since you bring it up, if there was someone who really had a vision for this, who would want to train and possibly take over this, apprentice, I would entertain some kind of thought as to some possibilities for passing this along to someone younger with new energy.
There you go.
It would take a period of apprenticeship, so to speak, and training, because there's more to it than meets the eye. It's not just having an inventory of books, but it's developing materials and keeping the momentum going with the new items, and also just figuring out new ways of helping people with it.
Sure. A heart and a passion also.
Yes, definitely so. And there are a few people out there who have that. It's just perhaps finding someone who would have the time and the financial ability to do something like that.
Well, I pray that the Lord send you someone, or one way or another, brother. I really do, because I truly believe that this ministry needs to go on. I think you have a great calling and a great ministry, and there has to be someone that the Lord knows and will allow this to happen, brother, because everything that you're doing is highly, highly needed in the community. So I'm with you and praying for you. Brother Jeremiah, it has been an absolute delight to talk with you and learn what you have brought to the body of Messiah in these last days. With the world in the shape it's in, we need more committed people developing tools to help us draw closer to the one and only true God. Thank you for being with us. Jeremiah Greenberg, be blessed, my friend.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you and Messianic Lifestyles.
Okay. Well, until next time, and hopefully we can check back with you from time to time. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Shalom, my friend.
Shalom.
The teachings and music on Messianic Lamb Radio are made available by the generous donations of listeners like you. Thank you.